When I first started off, I didn't have a guide or a coach teaching me the key steps to getting started in real estate investing. I wish I did because it would have saved me so much time and money. So today we're going to be reviewing the 8 key steps in finding your first deal and managing your business. Each one of these steps needs to be completed or else it can spell disaster. So get your pen and paper out and get ready to take some copious notes. Hey House Stackers, welcome to episode 19 of the Stacking Houses podcast, where we're helping working professionals create a solid plan B, a side hustle of passive streams of income through real estate investing. I'm your host, Damon Santamaria, and my goal for each show is to provide you with some practical and inspiring information so that you can create a solid financial plan for yourself. So to help you on your journey, I want to give you a sample property pro forma, which will allow you to calculate the amortization and cash flow so that you can estimate these when looking at your own deals. And you can pick this up simply by going to stackinghouses.com/pro forma. And while you're there, you can check out our free training on where Jim and I are finding great deals in today's landscape. So as I mentioned in the intro, there are 8 critical steps that you need to take, and the first one, starting on your real estate journey, should be getting your financial house in order. And when I embark on any new venture, I like to start by educating myself. Additionally, there are some other concepts that you'll want to have in place, like reviewing your credit and maximizing your credit score, which will be fundamental in getting qualified for a loan. And this can make a big difference in the interest rate that you pay, which will cost you thousands of dollars if you're not at the top tier. Next is goal setting, and don't underestimate this one. Setting concrete goals for what you want to achieve in both the short term and the long term will help keep you on track when you run into challenges. Next is saving for your first deal, and you can never start saving too early for that nest egg. There are some creative ways that you can go about doing this, which include setting up an automatic deposit with your employer and taking a percentage out of your paycheck, putting it into a separate account earmarked for investing. Perhaps you have a side hustle going on right now that can also be used. I was in sales for 17 years, and I actually used my commission checks to save for my first deal. There's some other creative ways as well, like foregoing Starbucks, or perhaps you don't eat out several times a month. Just remember, if there is a will, there is a way. The final area here is to start looking at deals. And there are so many different online tools available like Zillow and Opendoor, and this is the fun part. For me, I love looking at different properties and visualizing me owning them, calculating the cash flow, etc. So I know this first step is a lot of common sense type of stuff, but it'll help create a solid foundation for the next 7 steps. So this leads me to step 2, which is understanding the various types of properties available to investors. Everything from single-family homes to short-term rentals, multifamily and commercial, mobile homes, and self-storage, to name a few. One strategy that many folks beginning their journey will do is a short-term rental arbitrage model, where you rent a house from a landlord, you put it up on Airbnb or VRBO, and it allows you to cash flow without a ton of upfront expense. And check out our previous podcast with Austin Anderson, and this guy is absolutely killing it. Within 18 months, he acquired 10 of these short-term rentals and is cash flowing more than what his day job was paying him, so he was able to quit his job and go full-time. For those of you that already have a nest egg saved up, you may want to start off with a single-family home, a duplex, or even a fourplex. And it's okay to start small and grow into the other types of properties. For some of you, you may be interested in mobile homes or self-storage. For me, I started off with a simple 3-bedroom, 2-bath house that was right down the road from me. And I was able to use this first deal as a way to learn about fixing certain items on the house, finding and qualifying tenants, and learning about property management, so I was able to figure out what works and what wouldn't work. And as a side note, my very first deal I kept for 8 years, and I sold it a year ago and made $160,000. So these deals are real, and you just have to continue searching for that right first property. So obviously, there's a wide variety of niches in real estate that you'll want to familiarize yourself with in order to create the right strategy to build your portfolio. Okay, step 3, and this is so key, so if you're multitasking, please come back to me. The success of any real estate investor is to understand all of your revenue and expenses related to your deal. These include your mortgage payment, insurance, property taxes, vacancy, maintenance, and what's called make-ready expenses. And this is when one tenant moves out and you need to paint, maybe do some landscape, and kind of clean up the place in order for that next tenant to come in. The best expense, which we've covered on our last podcast episode, is depreciation, which will help you out at tax time. And just as a side note, depreciation is one of the 4 profit centers of real estate. The other 3 are appreciation, amortization, and of course, cash flow. Many people will only calculate appreciation and cash flow, but because real estate is multidimensional, we need to account for all 4. But back to expenses. So the other important piece is how your expenses will go up over time. For example, your taxes and insurance will most likely increase over time. So to counterbalance this, you might want to increase your rent by something like 3% each year so that you're not losing money. Also, as we mentioned in other podcast episodes, you want to use a property pro forma, which can be used to outline all of your revenue and expenses. And you'll want to fill this out on each and every property and be conservative with the numbers. Make sure that the deal makes sense day one and you're not simply relying on appreciation as your path to profitability. So this is a very important step because the numbers will make or break your deal every single time. Okay, on to step 4, which is building out your team. Many folks that are just starting off think that they're a solopreneur, but this couldn't be further from the truth. Your team members will include folks like real estate agents, an inspector, perhaps a contractor, an insurance agent, and a lender, an accountant or CPA, and potentially an attorney. Each one of these team members will be utilized to assist in running your business. You want to build out your team before you buy because the clock starts ticking once you close on your first property. I like to create a team roster that has several people for each category. You don't want to just rely on one person because they may not work out. And remember, this is a relationship business, and it'll be helpful to leverage your network. Jim and I have spent years and years building out our team, and we actually help our students through our own established network. Recently, one of our students interviewed several lenders, and this required them submitting all of the applications and financial documents, which can be a lengthy process. The lowest interest rate he was able to get on his own was close to 5%. Jim and I were able to assist and provide him with one of our pocket lenders, and he was able to lock in a 4.1% rate, which will save him over $20,000 over the life of the loan. Again, utilize your network in building out your team. Okay, so we've covered getting your financial house in order. We've reviewed the types of properties. We've talked about understanding your revenue and expenses and building out your team. And now the next step is the buying process. And this can be an emotional time because you're making offers, you're questioning if the deal is right for you, you're negotiating with the seller, and one minute you're sky high and the next you can feel crushed. But don't worry, this is all part of the normal process. Just remember to leverage your team and never give up. And here's a quick pro tip. Find a good coach or mentor that has been there and done that. Their years of experience will keep you grounded and potentially save you a lot of money. I can honestly say that for every student that Jim and I have coached, we have saved them thousands of dollars in just a matter of a few conversations. We've also talked folks out of buying the wrong deal, which could have been disastrous, all because they had tunnel vision and were focusing on the wrong things. So be sure to get that coach. Okay, so assuming that you've done the first 5 steps correctly, you'll now have your first property. Hooray! Now is when the fun begins. And once you have your first deal in your hands, you'll need to manage that property. Some people opt to self-manage their first deal, and they can learn everything from the ground up. But many busy working professionals will not have the time to deal with tenants, termites, and toilets. For these folks, you'll need a professional property management to manage the day-to-day business for you. And when contracting with a property management company, you'll want to understand the contract you're signing. Be sure to understand each and every clause because it can come back to haunt you if you're not careful. You'll also want to understand how they market, how they screen for tenants. You'll want to understand your expenses related to maintenance, utilities, and the tenant turn process. And hopefully, in the end, you won't have to deal with too many evictions either. Okay, so now we're on to step 7, which is the rehab and rent-ready projects. So for these, you'll definitely want to create a budget and understand how you're going to fund the project. You're also going to want to hire a licensed and bonded contractor that won't leave you high and dry halfway through the project. This could be a major point of failure if not done correctly. You'll also want to understand the 4 main systems of the property, which include the electrical, the plumbing, HVAC system, and the roof and foundation. Now, you don't necessarily need to be an expert in each of these areas, but you do want to have a general understanding of each so that you can have an educated conversation with contractors if and when there are maintenance issues. Finally, you'll also want to consider the overall aesthetics of your property to attract the right tenants. And this can include what type of appliances to get and whether to include these, your paint colors, light fixtures, landscaping, etc. Okay, so on to step 8, which is the final step. So in addition to the 7 steps that we just covered, there are some additional concepts that investors need to consider, which include becoming a real estate professional for tax purposes. And this is a tax designation that states that you can qualify by, number 1, having more than 1/2 of the personal services performed in real property trades or businesses in which you materially participate. And number 2, you need to perform at least 750 hours of service during the tax year in those same real properties or trades or part of that business. Now, there are many more rules, so you'll want to consult with a certified tax professional. But if and when you decide to go full-time in real estate, you can save you a great deal of money at tax time. Other areas that investors want to be aware of is how and where to diversify your holdings, meaning don't put all your eggs in one basket. Some folks may want to only invest in locations close to home, but if your area is dependent primarily on one employer or one industry and that business closes its doors, it can spell disaster for all of your properties in that area. Additionally, some folks live in California, New York, Hawaii, and some other high-priced areas, and the numbers just don't seem to make sense in those areas. So this is a key area that I've actually bought 17 properties, now 18. I just closed on another property, 18 properties out of state where the numbers make the most sense. And we've got some strategies that we'll discuss in future podcasts related to out of town or out of state investing. Okay, so the next essential concept is liquidating your properties for whatever reason if you decide to sell. And even us long-term buy and hold investors need to sell at times, and having a strategy for liquidating your properties will be key in getting the right price that you're seeking. And one way to liquidate is through what's called a 1031 exchange, where you defer the gains on the sale of your properties to avoid paying taxes immediately after the sale. And there are several rules, and it may sound complex, but if you do follow the IRS guidelines, it will help you defer your gains until a later point, allowing you to build up your portfolio, similar to tax-deferred IRAs and accounts that will allow you to, increase the value of that portfolio until retirement. So again, you want to consult with a professional on the exact rules of 1031 exchanges specific to your own situation. So I hope this has been helpful, because each step is a critical part of the process. Additionally, the 8 steps you just heard correspond to the 8 weeks that we go in depth in our course, Stacking Houses Academy. So if you're seriously considering investing into yourself and becoming a professional, I strongly encourage you to sign up for the course. So in closing, I hope you liked what you heard today, and I would appreciate a like, a share, a review on the platform that you're listening on. It really does help some of us little guys that are just getting started on our podcast journey, and it also helps you and other house stackers find our content. And so, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, I want to give you that sample property pro forma, which will allow you to calculate the amortization and cash flow and all of your expenses related to your revenue. And you can find this simply by going to stackinghouses.com/pro forma. And until next time, happy investing, my friends.